Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Jenna Fullenkamp with GuidePoint Security. Today I have the true pleasure of talking with Kirk Herath, Cybersecurity Strategic Advisor, Office of the Governor, State of Ohio. Hi, Kirk.
Hi, Jenna. It's nice to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. Your experience and tenure as an advisor to impactful organizations is quite extensive. Now, almost a full year into the role as Cybersecurity Strategic Advisor, what is one thing that you were excited to learn in the role?
The one thing that I was excited to learn is how many actual wonderful capabilities that the state of Ohio has in this space, including their own ISP. I mean, the state of Ohio has its own ISP. They aren't always sort of in the places that you would naturally expect them to be, but the number of good capabilities that we have is something that, again, that it took me several months to figure it all out, and I still learn something every day, but I'm not learning 100 things a day. So that's probably the one thing. And the other thing, which is I don't think I truly understood the authority that I had when I came in back in April, and it's a little at times it's almost a little disconcerting, but I tend to be less authoritarian and more collaborative anyway, so I don't really have to use it, but it's nice to know that I've got it and I got the support of the governor and lieutenant governor.
I appreciate that informative answer and very candid, which is great during this session. And another question for you and myself as an Ohioan, but having studied and resided as an Ohioan all your life, can you talk about the honor you feel advising for the state?
I feel at times that my 35 years of experience was all for this purpose. I had retired at the end of 2020. My wife and I retired from Nationwide after about 3 decades, and I really didn't think I'd ever work full time again. I had some consulting that I was doing, and I was teaching at a couple of universities, and but there was something missing. And I had been the chairman of the Cyber Ohio Advisory Board for first Attorney General DeWine. He put that together in 2017, and then we brought it over, and it was under the Innovate Ohio organization that the Lieutenant Governor Houston leads. And so I did have a connection to the administration and to the governor and lieutenant governor, but I was truly surprised when they called me at the beginning of this year and started to discuss and sort of define what this role would be. And it was interesting because it was about 15 months after I retired, and I was looking for something. I certainly needed a sabbatical. There's no doubt about that. I could not have just gone straight from what I was doing into this. I did need to decompress a little bit after 30 years in the pressure cooker. But yeah, I am completely honored that the Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Houston gave me this opportunity, and I truly feel that it is almost a ministry. It's my capstone mission, and I don't know how long it's going to take. I thought maybe it would take a year. It's going to take several years to kind of get this into where we need it to be. But yeah, I as a citizen and just as a person, I mean, I can't be any happier. This is literally the best job I've ever had in my life, bar none, from a fulfillment. Now, it is a job, so it's hard work, but it's very fulfilling work, and I get to work with lots and lots of good people. I mean, the people at the state of Ohio in this space are very mission oriented and very driven, and they are true civil servants in every sense of the term.
Well, that's an incredible answer and journey to your point that's kind of led you to this point in your life. which I think is really neat. One thing that you and I were chatting about before we jumped into the formal interview was just your advocacy and giving back as a professor. I think education advocacy is really important. So I wanted to weave this in as we were speaking today.
Mhm.
What is one thing from your role that you've taken back to the classroom as a professor at the three prominent universities that you do teach at?
Well, it's just two. It's just two at this point. It's
I gave you extra credit.
You did. You did. I don't think I can handle one more. Um, it's a Cleveland Law School up in Cleveland State, and then Moritz Law School at Ohio State. So the I try to bring practicality to the classroom, and I go back to when I was a law student many years ago, and certainly all the education was useful to one degree or another. But the professors who were adjunct professors who had actually practiced in that space for most of the time, their entire careers,
Mhm.
certainly brought different perspective to it, a much more real world perspective, and an approach that helped me as a student and what I try to help my students, an approach that is um, I don't know, a workaday approach. How do you actually break down? How in real world would you get this decision made by, a CIO? How would you work with, just practical relationship things? Sometimes, it isn't as ordered as it looks like in a statute. Things are messy. Things are almost always in the gray. Um, there are very few right defining right and wrong answers in law or in, frankly, cybersecurity. There is no perfect cybersecurity, right? There's no perfect privacy. So you try to get the best answer. And I think that a lot of law students are perfectionists.
Mhm.
And and what I try to get them to take away is that there is no perfect answer, and that sometimes, particularly with all the other things that are going on, sometimes good enough is good enough, right? And don't let um, the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? You've got to move your organization forward. You're trying to solve a business person's problem and get them from point A to point B, enable a project, enable a product, enable a contract. So again, at the end of the day, you have to deliver, and you have to be brief. I will put on my assignments and my tests that I just gave. I literally will say, like, you have to be able to give me this answer in less than a page. I know you could write an entire book on this, but I'm not going to read it. So, and your clients someday, when you're out in the real world, they're not going to read it. So be able to understand it well enough so that you can actually summarize it into in a manner that somebody can quickly distill what you're trying to get to, what your answer is, and what one or two other options might be.
Very valid, especially in technology and cybersecurity. Today is not the same as yesterday.
No,
Threats are changing, landscape is changing, so incredibly valuable. Taking a step back, looking at establishing a baseline. In
mhm,
cybersecurity, we often say you can't protect what you don't know. So,
correct.
speaking through your experience, would you agree with the criticality of establishing a kind of a baseline assessment for an organization or environment before trying to protect it?
Oh, absolutely, it's fundamental. Um, the first thing you need to do is an assessment. When the governor and the staff were kind of talking to me about this, and we were defining what the role was going to be, and uh, that was the first thing I said. We're going to have a little bit of patience. I know you guys want to hit the ground running, but we don't know where we're going to go yet, right? To your point. Um, and I certainly didn't have the insight. The state of Ohio's capabilities are spread out. It's sort of a federated system, so there's no big glowing head. It all feeds up really to the governor, and he doesn't have the time or the experience necessarily to manage that, right? So I'm effectively acting as that hub, that fulcrum around which everything else is kind of buzzing. And so the first thing we did was we hired a independent third party to come in and give a high level capability and maturity assessment of all of the executive branch cybersecurity capabilities, and that gave us that visibility. And effectively, kind of out of that came our program, the program and the array of projects that we're going to be working on over the next. It's going to be about a 2 to 3 year program at this point. Mostly because there's a lot of predicate things that have to be done. We know what needs to get done, but sometimes there's predicate things that need to be done before that, right? There's the old leg bones connected to the hip bones connected, to everything else. So yeah, the assessment was fundamental, and out of that kind of is everything is flowing. And at some point, right, we'll in 3 years we'll do another one and see, okay, we said that if we did these things, our maturity would go from here to there, and did it, right? We'll test ourselves. And part of the assessment is we're building a GRC function that's going to be constantly assessing as well, and reporting and providing visibility to senior management.
I appreciate you walking through that, even at a high level, what the process looks like, and engaging a third party, bringing in additional resources on something like this. How do you decide to align and bring in those resources to complete something like this?
Government procurement is a little bit different than what I was used to in the private sector, and I ran technology procurement legal for almost 12 years. So I was part of almost every large procurement decision, and my lawyers ran, they did the contracts and they ran the governance around the process. So we did RFPs, but there was always, in the private sector, there's always a way that you can kind of hire a consultant or contractor that you want, right? I mean, if you have enough stars on your shoulder, you can kind of get exceptions, right? Well, there are really no exceptions in the state. So you can do one of two things. You can go RFP, and that would take, I was told, somewhere between 6 to 9 months minimally to get, or I could go with a bunch of vendors, choose among several vendors that already had a state master and who already were doing business with the state. And so, I went through the list, and we did some preliminary questioning with emails and stuff around what their capabilities were, and then we did some interviews, and then we did some bids, and we found one that aligned with what we needed. They had the experience, and they were, the price was fair. And and I was very, at the end of the day, I was very satisfied. But you are constricted somewhat in the government space as to who, particularly if you want to get moving quickly, which I did. My boss actually wanted it done, before I even came in, right? So I mean, Governor DeWine is he cares a lot about the people of the state of Ohio. And I think they know it. I think they gave him the largest electoral victory in gubernatorial history in the state of Ohio. So clearly he cuts across lots of party affiliations, and I think people understand kind of what makes him tick. And so he wanted this thing done, and he wanted it done sooner than later. So we did. We were fortunate enough to find a kind of an already available vendor. But government procurement is, and it's very transparent as far as the public is concerned. So we did everything by the book, and we were fortunate to get a very good product at the end of the day.
Well, Kirk, you answered each of my questions so eloquently. It was truly a pleasure. I appreciate you taking time to join me today.
Well, I'm very happy to have had the opportunity, Jenna, and I hope someday we can do this again.
Thank you. As a reminder, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. We'll see you soon.